Hello. It's good to be back with you, doing another one of these small videos on common interviewing mistakes. We've covered a lot of different things along the way here. Done some planning, active listening, questioning, responding versus answering, uh, rapport, uh, some important issues to interviewing, and we're going to cover another one here now. I want to talk to you a little bit about interview room setup and the planning, preparation, and strategizing that should go into that. I think sometimes we get kind of caught up in a rut as to how we do this, or we have these kind of preconceived concepts that, hey, the best place to do this interview is my office where I can, or my conference room where I can control the environment and things like that. I think making those foregone conclusions of saying that's the only way to do it and not planning and strategizing for each individual case is a mistake. I think we need to do it for each individual case, because what we're looking for is the same thing I say in a lot of the training I do. We're looking to maximize the information that we get. And sometimes to maximize that information, we need to change the way we go about doing things. So we want to plan and strategize each step of the way. I want you to think about planning and strategizing for a few different things, not just for the interview room setup, but that's important in itself by itself. So one of the things I want you to think about is, how am I going to make that first contact with the person that I'm setting this interview up with? I think sometimes we pick up that phone and make that call, or drop an email, and don't really consider that that's our first opportunities for rapport and developing relationship. And maybe we're wonderful to meet in person, but maybe on the telephone we sound a little like Attila the Hun, and we've already interfered with our ability to get some good rapport going if we've already damaged the relationship before we even meet. So we want to really strategize, what's the best way to do that? Is it best just to show up? Do I want to give this person advanced knowledge of my arrival based on things that I want to ask during that interview? We should be considering that. We should consider, is it best to do it at his place? Might there be fruits of the crime at that location, or information that we're not going to glean if we invite him to our office? We want to strategize all this. We want to think of how we're going to initiate that contact. What's best for maximizing results? Remember, rapport begins there. You don't want to have a difference in how you appear there and then how you appear in the interview room, because we know confidence and credibility is very important to our success in the interview room. And we may have some previous obstacles to overcome. Maybe they've talked to somebody else from your office before who is not the best person to talk to, and they've already have an attitude toward you or your entity because of that previous contact. So we want to have that knowledge before we go in there, so we know if we're going to have to fix that. Recognize that this first contact, the first contact, is the best contact to elicit the best information. So we want to get everything we can get in that first interaction. We want to stick to it. So we want to have a good plan in order to make that happen well. And we have to be ready to adjust and adapt. And oftentimes the good planning facilitates this. It's a quote I use all the time. It's from Dwight Eisenhower, who said, plans are useless, but planning is indispensable, because that planning prepares you for the possible eventualities that are going to occur in the interview room. We want to consider who's going to be present too when we get to this interview. Ideally, it would be nice if it was just us, maybe our partner, a witness to it, and the person we're talking to. That's an ideal situation. The less people there, we know that people are more likely to tell the truth if there isn't a whole audience. So we know that to be true, but we can't always control that. So if there's going to be more people there, and I've got some great examples of that from my career, where there's people in that room that I don't want in that room, but I can't do a thing about it. Nobody's backing me up. We're not getting rid of them. So how are we going to set that room up? How are we going to strategize the room arrangement in order to maximize the impact with the individual we're talking to and minimize the impact of the witnesses and others in the room, be they union reps, be they attorneys, be they clergy, whether it's a supervisor, a human resources person. We want to consider that all the time, and we want to address arranging that interview to maximize the results. Again, with the strategizing as necessary to do that. Recognize that because we do it at somebody else's location, that doesn't mean we can't set that interview room up. I've used rooms at other locations all the time. And if I'm the first one in the room, it's my room. So I'm going to set it up the way I want to set it up. So we want to take that into account. But I want to talk to you a little bit about the whole issue of room arrangement and what that says about what's going on in the room. So let me share something with you here. Okay, I think you should have my screen at this point. So I'm a little box and you got my screen. Optimal room arrangement. Recognize that the larger the room is, the ideal room they say is about 8 by 10, relatively small room. You don't want to be interviewing people in a big auditorium setting or a big, huge room. We can't always control this, but there's things we can do within the context of that room to make it appear smaller. So ideally an 8 by 10 room. We don't want them looking out on the beach or palm trees where they're thinking about escaping and not there present with us. We want that room to be minimally furnished without a lot of distractions. And I want you to think about removing barriers. And I get blowback on this all the time. I talk about it in all sorts of classes as to the issue of barriers, i.e. sitting across a conference table, sitting across a desk from somebody else. And I asked them about that whole concept of getting that barrier out of the way. So you're sitting across from the person without the barrier between you. Now, if you have that situation, even though that a table is going to say, well, I need something to write on or whatever. Well, you can put that table or desk or whatever to the side of you, and you can shuttle documents or whatever you want to show along that table, but not have it in front of you. So we want to get rid of those barriers, and we see bad examples of this all the time. We want that interpersonal interaction. Gives you the opportunity to use mirroring and leading and things like that. Get that out of the way. We don't want to be sitting on low sofas where we have to tuck and roll to get out of those things. We want to think about anything that provides a barrier to communication. So the issue of clothing gets up. The issue of language comes up. We want to eliminate those things that appear to be barriers. Don't downplay the significance of this. It is very important in the interview room setup. So if you look at this setup here, excuse me, you have the interviewer in the with the green there, the witness to the side. I don't have a problem with the secondary in the room, because I say if I can't develop effective rapport, if this person is looking at me like I'm their sister's ex-husband or whatever, where I can't overcome this, I want my secondary to be in the room with me so that that person can attempt to establish rapport. That person can then conduct the interview and I become the secondary in the room. It can be easily done when you have two people there. You have the subject or the person that you're talking to, that you're interviewing, sitting across from you there, at a distance of about 4 to 6 feet, that personal distance area. You don't want them 8 feet apart. You don't want to be up on their lap or whatever. You want them in it's just a regular sturdy chair, not necessarily that has wheels on it, not necessarily an armchair, just a comfortable chair that they can sit in. I'm going to sit in the same thing, although I like to have a rolly chair because I like to be able to close distance and be able to move as necessary. But you want those barriers out of the way. A lot of times when I ask why you don't want to do this, you get the answer, well, it's not the way our room is set up. Well, most times that can be changed. Although I did talk to somebody once that said the table was bolted down, so that kind of interferes with that. But most times it can be changed. Things can be moved out of the way. So when I ask it, they say, well, it can't be moved. And then what it comes down to is, well, it kind of makes me uncomfortable to have that out of the way, where you're sitting exposed like that. Well, you practice that for a little bit and it's really no longer an issue for you. So I want you to think about whether you can do that differently and make a difference with it. So room setup is very important. So some things we can think about as we go forward here. I'd like to give you something that you can think about and see if you can implement it into your strategy to become a more effective interviewer, a more quality interviewer. So have we planned and strategized? We probably have as to where we're going and things like that, but have we planned and strategized with regard to location, with regard to who's going to be present, with regard to, is there a way to do this differently in order to become more effective? Have we removed all barriers to communication, be they physical barriers, be they barriers in the way we present ourselves? Let's get those out of the way to make that communication more effective. Can we change the way the room's set up to make it more effective? Is there a way to do that? Do I have to become more creative in the way we do that? Have we considered where participants should sit in order to minimize, and I could talk to you all day about this, as to how to set things up in order to minimize participation of some people and maximize participation of other people. We should do that in these situations. And then finally, are we prepared to explain what we're doing? We should have a very good narrative response as to why we're doing it the way we are. And in most cases, that narrative response should focus on the fact that this is beneficial to the person you're talking to. Not it makes me feel more comfortable, or it's going to help me get more information, but why it's beneficial to the person we're talking to. And most of our answers or responses in the interview room should be like that. So hopefully those are useful to you. If you have comments, issues with what I've talked to you about, you want more information on it, don't hesitate to reach out to me. If you're watching this on YouTube, I have no issue with you liking or sharing or signing up to receive these. I'm going to keep doing these about once a week. Just planning my next one on handling denials. How do we deal with denials in the interview room? So if this is interesting to you, please keep in contact. Don't hesitate to reach out to me if there's a topic you would like me to see me cover. And I thank you for being here today, and stay safe out there. Do a good job. Be those rock star interviewers.